We have seen her and loved her on screen in Fire, Earth, Bhavandar and many other movies. But we have even more been deeply moved by her directorial ventures, Firak and Manto.
I have to say, after the last session, इतना जोश था और मुझे अपने जब मैं 17-18 की थी तब के दिन याद आ गए जब हम लाल सलाम और C2 के लिए नाटक करते थे और फैक्ट्रीज में जाते थे। उस ज़माने से बहुत लंबी जर्नी रही है। हम गाने गाते थे, लाल झंडा लेकर कॉमरेड आगे बढ़ते जाओ, तुम नहीं रहे, सफदर के लिए गाया था एक तरह से, तुम नहीं रहे इसका गम तो है, फिर भी लड़ते जाएंगे। लेकिन आज जो मैं शायद कहने वाली हूँ वो इतना अपबीट नहीं होगा, तो आप मुझे माफ़ कर दीजिएगा उसके लिए। I'm just preparing the ground.
Nandita, as you can see, the audience is full of young people.
Fantastic. Really salute to all the young people who have taken the lead on this. Definitely.
We were wondering if we could start this conversation by you talking about your journey into being a progressive socio-political person. You have been one of the most lit artists in more trendy terms. But could you tell us about your journey?
My father is a painter, mother a writer, so there was a lot of art and people from the arts at home. But my real socio-political training, I would really owe it to Sardar Hashmi, with whom I did my street theatre. We were 17, 18, I just passed out of school, and we used to do these street plays. Hindi या अंग्रेजी क्या? What is the?
कुछ भी
नहीं, क्योंकि ये English Hindi is also a huge divide. उस पे भी हमें थोड़ी सी बात करनी चाहिए. English, okay. So Hindi. अच्छा, दोनों मिला के बोलते हैं खिचड़ी भाषा में. So at that time we would do these plays, and we as young people, and I hope that idealism, and I know that idealism is there, and I hope even in all of us who are not so young anymore, are not jaded, and we still are idealistic fools in believing that the world will change. And that's the kind of spirit with which we would do these plays, और एक नुक्कड़ नाटक करते थे और सोचते थे कि कुछ बदलने वाला है. But तब से एक वो feeling ज़रूर है that every drop counts, that nothing should be undermined, that every bit that we can do. And I think that changed something for me very fundamentally. Then I did my master's in social work, and that exposed me to many different realities. It's not about the degree, but just the chance to get to meet people, to see different realities that you otherwise would not be privy to. So that was a great learning experience for me.
One of the major avenues for activism for youth today has been social media. This has been a market change, say, from activism in previous decades. And social media has been a fraught space for expression and surveillance of all sorts. You, of course, are no stranger to censorship. You have faced it all
and being trolled every day.
Absolutely. And but you have been one of the gritty ones who has withstood it. What would you have to say about social media and, in general, the kinds of more fundamental forms of censorship we are now seeing around us?
See, we used to protest like the protest today. Actually going on marches and protesting and sloganeering and singing and all forms of peaceful protest. For me, this whole social media, online petitions and protests was new. For all of us, I guess, a few years ago, that was unheard of. All these mediums are neutral mediums. It's up to us what we make of it and what we do with it. It's not good or bad. The only thing is it does create a very binary kind of understanding, because in very few characters you have to express yourself. It's not a place for nuances. And we do need nuances. Of course, in some things, maybe things are black and white. But beyond that, to create an understanding, we do need nuances. And ideally, it should be a mix of online things. When I'm sure all of us have been to some protests. I mean, the Mumbai Collective in that sense is for us. And when I say us, it's not obviously on the lines on which we are being divided, but us as liberals, as people who care about what's happening. We've all gone to those protests. And, why do we go there? Apart from adding our voice, we ourselves, there's something that moves within us. We feel we feel more encouraged, we don't feel alone. So these kind of gatherings are extremely important as reaffirmations of our own faith, because this is going to be a long struggle. Let's not fool ourselves that this is a short battle. We are onto something much longer. It's a marathon. We can't be sprinting. We have to be here for a very long time, and we need each other. But having said that, and I'm digressing a little bit, but why I said it's going to be a dampener is I think we also need to focus as to what do we need to do, what are the dangers of this movement as well. I think one that I often see is that many of us want, this complete liberals. We ourselves are dividing often. I hear even amongst ourselves that, oh, that person said this, that group is not doing this. How do we unify ourselves in a way that we can truly be a force to reckon with? Because we are up against a lot more. We are up against strategies, much more organized bodies. By the very definition that we are liberals, we actually are also, each one is onto their own thing. We all are doing what we can in our own little worlds, but for us to come together once a year, Mumbai Collective, or when things are really bad, we go onto the streets or meet at the protest, but that's not going to sustain it. And it's not only an electoral loss that we have had because of these fragments, it's also a loss of an idea of India. I think that is what is so deeply threatened. And our constitution, and all modern constitutions, if you see, do hold up the individual beyond a community identity, a group identity. And suddenly we are being divided on a kind of a group identity, trying to homogenize identities. And, so this kind of politics is so divisive and dangerous that I feel we need to really organize ourselves much better. And we do not have to divide ourselves in the way we tend to do. I mean, I see that even in various civil rights movement in groups, that we have so many differences. Even the national movement, if you think about the freedom struggle, for decades it's not that every Indian joined it, because they looked at, even among ourselves, we look at people as the other. We say, oh, but they did this and they said this, and that's really not liberal enough. We are also dividing, and that's the same thing that happened in the national struggle. It took a long time, and it took people like Gandhi to really bring people on a common ground. So I think our common ground is what I hope, I'm sure in these 2 days and in all our conversations, if we can find that common ground on which we do not divide ourselves. Because many people tell me as well that you were so much vocal earlier, you used to come on television debates, why don't you do it now? And so is it less? Are you feeling scared? Is it because you're not making enough time? We are judging each other. I don't think it is my place to say, why are you saying more? Why are you screaming and alienating people? Or why are you saying it only through your writing? As long as we express ourselves enough in our area of influences and work hard enough to make sure that our stand is loud and clear. What means we adopt, whether we are screaming or we choose to be on television or we choose to be on rally or we choose to click a petition, all of that is fine. I think we just have to keep connecting the dots and not divide them.
Following from what you just said, I'm reminded we had a panel yesterday called Artists Against Communalism. And we had some fine young actors and artists who were part of the session. We had Swara Bhaskar and Sishan Ayub and Rasika Akashe.
My name was put there without asking me, Ram, where are you? So it wasn't that I played hooky, it's just that I had a prior commitment. And that's why, just to kind of clarify.
And we also had Sushant Singh, which was very refreshing.
Yeah.
There was Anand Patwardhan and Saeed Akhtar Mirza in the conversation too. But the kind of sound bites they have been giving over social media and otherwise have been exceptionally brave, given the kind of mainstream work that they're involved in and the consequences that hold both for their personal and professional repute. You have remained on the fringes of Bollywood, and you have held a stand from the very beginning of your life and career in that sense. What do you see as the impact of the changing times on the industry and artists at large, and what may we ask are the reasons why you seem to have relatively withdrawn from the public space and the kind of shrill public debate we're seeing around us?
I remember the first time that artists really took to the streets was when Sundara was killed, and this was 89, long time ago, and Sehmat was formed, Sardar Hashmi Memorial Trust, and people spontaneously came onto the streets, artists, writers, photographers, journalists, and opposed it. Then I remember after Fire, when Fire was, by a group of people who thought of themselves as the custodians of culture, decided, despite it being passed by the censor board, and it was stopped. And again, people just, and I mean, over the years, I've seen that many times that artists have taken a stand. We now live also in times of lot of fear, and we live in times where art also is being co-opted. Art, again, in some sense, we used to think the real art is supposed to reflect reality, reflect truth. But even art is being misused. Like all times, it's not new. Art is being used for propaganda films and all sorts of, to push forward certain ideas. So I think artists definitely have a very strong role to play, no doubt about it. And we know the importance of art, thanks to these conservative, bigoted, orthodox people, because they keep banning our films, they want to burn our books and tear our paintings, and they in fact remind us that art is important. It does go into our subconscious very subliminally without us even realizing it impacts our responses, and that's why we continue to do what we do. Over the years, my own engagement has definitely changed. When I was 17, 18 and or even probably till 30, we used to scream and shout, we used to go on these rallies, and those are also important. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of that at all. There was a time I used to be very angry. I used to justify my anger that it's all against injustice and it's the right thing to do. And maybe I'm grateful for that period and that exposure and many people who have impacted my life. With Harsh Mandar, we've done so many programs. Who's here with Javed Anand, the whole lot of people that who have been my mentors, friends over the years. But I think it's also a very personal journey. There was a time I wanted to go into every TV debate because I felt it was important to sort of speak about things that you care for. Now I'm trying to do more through the arts. And of course, when there are like at the Jaipur Lit Fest, if journalists ask, one is not shying away from it. But I think not everybody has to be screaming and shouting. It's also, I don't have to keep proving. I don't want to do this. This whole virtue signaling is also happening among liberals, not all, but some, where we have to keep sort of, posturing to each other. Listen, I am liberal, I'm still liberal, I'm actually more liberal than that person. We don't need to do all of that. Like sometimes even my own friends say, oh, but you didn't tweet about that thing that happened day before. And I was like, I by choice, I don't have a television at home. I read a very thin magazine. I read a couple of online news portals like Wire and Scroll and a few others, and also international ones, but very minimal. We don't have to keep proving how liberal we are to each other. We are together. We are doing the best that we can. And we will not judge each other for a friend or a colleague or a, co-traveler. We are not going to say that I'm doing this and why aren't you? I'm speaking up here and why didn't you come on that day? Why didn't you tweet this and why didn't you tweet that? I think that just puts a lot of pressure. I'm trying to do the best I can through my work and keep my own sanity. I don't want the negativity and the hatred to consume me. Maybe I'm not strong enough to consume me, because every day when you read this, it is deeply, deeply distressing and troubling. Maybe my own threshold of, sometimes I just wake up and, I'm sort of literally tears in my eyes and I feel that are we going to be those Germans who are just going to watch all this happen? Is it just going to, are we not feeling enough of that sense of urgency? So there are days, there are days that I feel terribly pessimistic, I have to admit. And then there are days, because largely I'm an optimist, then there are days that I feel that all you young people who have led us, all you strong journalists who are writing, so courageously, everyone who's putting their neck on the line, and not just known people and celebrities and all of that. We are too celebrity-driven media and society, but there are so many people who may be nameless and faceless who are risking their lives and coming to these protests and literally taking bullet on their hands. So salute to them.
Finally, what do you think Manto would say about the present times? He remains most relevant to our times.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, also neglected. But you have been so closely associated with Manto for the past 7-8 years. What would Manto say to us today?
Yeah, in fact, his relevance seems to be just growing since I started working, and that's sad in a way. Well, he's going to be firstly not as polite as any of us who are speaking here. He's going to be extremely rude and say, "Kuch nahi sikha tum logon ne." You know, it's 70 years and we really haven't learned anything. You're still using religious markers to divide us, something that destroyed people, killed people. Till date, partition remains the largest mass migration of 14 million people. And so, you know, to bring out those identities and making them the reason to prove ourselves as Indians. I mean, to be an Indian itself is an identity. Even nationalism is an identity. All of us have multiple identities, and nobody should be telling us to be proud or ashamed of any of our identities, especially the ones we are born in, that we have had nothing to do. I think the only identity that really matters for each one of us is our thoughts, you know, our actions, our behavior, what we are responsible for, what we do and think and feel, and not what we are born in. So I think he's going to be very, very upset with us, and so are going to be all the great freedom fighters, known and unknown, who gave their lives, who created this constitution that upholds every individual's freedom. So I think we owe it to them.
Finally, what are you working on now?
Well, I'm trying. We have to subvert the system. So we're working on films and little projects to be able to say without being didactic, without people shutting us down. No point being a martyr. We are in it for the long haul, and we need each other. So as I finished the Manto film also, with saying "Bol bol ke lab azad hai tere, bol zuban ab tak teri hai."
On that note, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, I have to run. I would have loved to be here, but I'm also a mother of a 9-year-old who I have to entertain on a Sunday, so don't judge me for that. Thank you.
Please, for Nandita Das, thank you.